All right. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the most scientific and most important list in the history of mankind since last Tuesday, at least. That's right. It's time for Power Rankings. I'm Tom Bogert. With me is Matt Doyle. Matthew Doyle, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. I enjoyed that intro because I think you're right. Like this is the MLSsoccer.com Power Rankings are 100% scientific, and they're clearly make or break for some people. Like the happiness quotient in their lives for the week is determined on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. when these power rankings come out, and then further enhanced, obviously, by expert analysis from usually me and Andrew Wiebe, but special guest host Tom Bogert this week.
I'm subbing in off the bench. I'm not going to make a Knicks joke. That was just for the pre-show. That's not for the real show. We're just going to keep it moving. All right. First of all, hey, look, we're sponsored this week, Doyle. Maybe that's why Wiebe wanted to run. He wanted me to do this, and he can collect the sponsorship check. I just do the work here. Power Rankings are presented to you by So Rare. That feels pretty good. I might not be Andrew Wiebe, but that was all right, huh?
That was pretty good, yeah.
All right, with most MLS teams having about 7 games remaining, give or take 1 or 2, and both conferences having an absolute brawl for just a few playoff spots, I think thematically you can look at this show viewing it through the playoff race lens. You know, as always, check out MLSsoccer.com for the full rankings, some fun commentary from my man J. Sam Jones. With that, let's get into it. Let's start with the team who has never missed the playoffs in their MLS history. Your reigning CONCACAF Champions League winners, the Seattle Sounders at number 19, coming off a 2-1 loss to the rival Portland Timbers. As if this rivalry needed any more juice, both the Timbers and the Sounders had their playoffs lives kind of hanging in the balance a little bit coming in. Did that give it a different feel to this game for you, or is just like the spice meter always to the top when these two play?
Oh, the spice meter in this game was set higher than I think we've seen from these two teams over the past couple of years when they've met. For whatever reason, I thought it was flat last year, and it was flat the first couple of meetings this year, though Portland played really well in Seattle last time. The Sounders didn't. But, of course, that's what happened here. Portland played really well in this game. They weren't perfect, but they played really well, and the Sounders didn't. And you, Tom, you said it, man. Like, it felt like both teams, their playoff lives were hanging in the balance. Seattle lost. They're 4 points below the playoff line.
Correct.
The teams that they're chasing, most of them have a game in hand, or is it just the Galaxy who have a game in hand?
The Galaxy definitely do. I got the standings right up right now. Yeah, the Galaxy have 2 on the Portland. They have 1 on Seattle. So, but like RSL is the same. So it's a tough one.
Are they done?
Look, I mean, no, because it's MLS. So like these things can change. And again, it sounds like a little bit of a cop-out. But like, and I'm just going to run through the remaining schedule. I know this isn't always great for radio. Remaining schedule: at Orlando, versus Houston, versus Austin, at Vancouver, versus Cincinnati, at Kansas City, versus San Jose. It's not the worst thing in the world. So I'm not ruling it out, but this is like, we've been waiting all season for here comes the Sounders run. Here comes the Sounders run. Here comes the Sounders run. As much, literally a week and a half ago. Okay, Galaxy game at home, and then now they're playing Portland. This is it. This is the run. And it just hasn't happened. Again, this is a team that hasn't missed the playoffs ever. So I kind of lean towards believe it when I see it. But like, we're getting down to the red line of, all right, like at Orlando is a must win. And that's 6 points, Orlando, Houston. It has to be. Yeah,
I mean, we're seeing it, right? We'll believe it when I see it. Well, we're seeing it now because the Sounders had 3 straight 6-pointers. They took 1 point. 1 point against RSL at home, against a Galaxy team that has not been playing super great, and against a Portland team that, frankly, had not been playing super great.
Right.
And the Sounders couldn't get it done. And I think that, like, you can point to a couple of things. The attacking chemistry up that left side has not been good all year long. Like Nuhu and Jordan Morris just don't work well together. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is the loss of João Paulo for the year. And then, his number 1 replacement was supposed to be Obed Vargas, and he got hurt too. Danny Leyva, I think, has played pretty well, but like Danny Leyva is not a demon you build a title team around.
And also, Obed Vargas is 16. They shouldn't be in this position where they're like, oh my God, a 16-year-old is hurt.
Yeah. So things just kept getting worse and worse. But I look at the way this team plays, and the big thing to me is that Rui Diaz and Ladero, and to a lesser extent, Steph Fry, they look their age now. They really do. Yeah. And they're still very good, but they're not so good that they can just rescue you when when everything is going wrong. Whereas for the past 6 years or longer, in Fry's case, they absolutely were that for the Sounders. And so yeah, like it started to feel very real with this result that Seattle, for the first time in their MLS lives, are not going to make the playoffs. And it's the most MLS thing ever, of course, that it happens during the same year in which they became the first MLS team to win the modern iteration of the CCL. Like, only in this league does something that ridiculous happen.
So that was going to be my next question, and not to kind of start burying them alive here, because I do still believe that they're alive, but would you take a CCL for missing the playoffs like this?
Yes, absolutely. 1,000%. Like, they're always going to be the first team across the finish line in that. Like, the Sounders are the first MLS team to win the modern iteration of the CCL. If the Club World Cup happens, and I hope it does, but it seems like that's up in the air, they'll be the first MLS team ever to play in the Club World Cup. I would absolutely take that over one bad season and missing the playoffs. And I know that that's not what Sounders fans really want to be talking about right now. And it's kind of a false binary because it doesn't have to be one or the other. But like,
it's good content.
When we look back on this year and we talk about the Sounders, everything besides the CCL is going to be a footnote. It really is. Like, they built the team. They went all in the winter window for that reason. And they won CCL. They beat 2 Liga MX teams on the way. They beat what I thought was a very, very good NYCFC team on the way. They didn't lose a single game. No MLS team has ever done that before. Their goal differential in CCL play was +13. And past MLS teams that made to the finals were like +3, +4. I think Montreal made it to the final, I think, with a negative goal differential. So they
classic.
It's what Seattle. Like, this is obviously going to take some shine off of it if they end up missing to some degree, but like, their trophy cabinet has something that nobody else in the league has. If I'm a fan, I'd make that trade every single day.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And to the point of it being a false binary, it doesn't need to be this way, but obviously no João Paulo, no Christian Roldan too, who's injured. But I think back to when João Paulo went down with that injury, non-contact, you kind of knew that, you feared that it was probably an ACL or something like that, that'd be out for the season. And I remember thinking to myself, they're good enough, they're deep enough, but like, am I gonna be thinking about this in 6 months about this team? And I didn't think there would be no playoffs, but yeah, it's really difficult to replace one of the best players in the league. Moving on, one spot ahead of Seattle at number 19, are the New England Revolution at number 18. They are down 1 with a 2-1 loss to the LA Galaxy. They have lost back-to-back games, conceding 8 goals in their last 3 MLS games, and they are now 2 points below the playoff line with an attack that is I call it Carlos Hill and the boys, because they're missing Gustavo Bell, who returned last game and came off the bench, but still no Giacomo Veroni, still no Dylan Barrero, and still no Ishmael DeJoy-Strati.
Yeah. I mean, I said last segment that the most MLS thing ever is, the Sounders winning CCL and then missing the playoffs in the same year. How about Brian Schmetzer and Bruce Arena both missing the playoffs for the first time ever and happened to do it in the same year? You kind of hit it, Tom. Like, in a large way, the issue with the Revs is that injuries have killed them, and it's not only taken a toll up front, but that back line, like, they have not gotten to spend a ton of time together, especially in central defense. And I think on top of that, both Andrew Farrell and Henry Kessler have been a level below what they were last year. That said, I still have more hope for the Revs. I think their schedule's a little friendlier, and with these guys getting healthy, I think the Revs can make a push here that I'm not sure I see in the cards for Seattle.
Yeah, so 4 of their last 6 are against teams below the playoff line. Twice against Chicago, 1 against at Houston, 1 against Atlanta. So it's not the most difficult. Again, it's got to be 6 points against the Chicago games, Houston. That's got to be 9 points. We're at the time of the season where there is no make it up on the back end. Like, you have to win those games. But look, am I crazy for maybe looking at this again? Maybe it's the Supporters Shield shine. There's a very different team than just last year because of all the changes. But am I crazy for looking at this team and thinking that in what I believe to be a wide open East behind Philadelphia, everybody has flaws, and not just flaws, but a lot of potentially fatal flaws behind Philadelphia? Am I crazy for looking at this team and thinking if Bo, and then just 2 of Veroni, Barrero, or Tajori Strati. If those 3 of those whatever are back, that this is a legitimate, maybe contenders too strong for where they are, but like a legitimate chance to make some noise.
Yeah, you're not, right? And a lot of it is because they have Carlos Heel is still one of the very best players in the league, and then if Bo is healthy, then they have a goal scorer. I don't love Bo, like he like his shoot on sight, vibes are not always the right thing, but at the same time, I think they were working really well for the Revs earlier in the year. So if they have 2 match winners in attack and then they can get solid in defense and they have a match winner in goal, which Georgi Petrovic has been so far, like, this has the makings of a team that, like, almost like the 2020 Minnesota side that made it all the way to the Western Conference final before the Sounders, had that amazing comeback. It can happen. It absolutely can happen with this group, especially because they've gone to a 4-2-3-1 this year, more of a 4-2-3-1. It's right. Bruce Arena, so it's never hard and fast, right? But like just getting more numbers in central midfield means that they don't get dominated in central midfield the way they did against Pumas in that second leg, or the way that they did in the playoffs last year and the year before against NYCFC and Columbus. So I actually think they're set up really well for it. And as you pointed out, the schedule down the stretch here, it's not the toughest thing in the world, man. Right? Like they have NYCFC at home this weekend, and that is in theory a tough game. But like, I wouldn't be shocked if the Revs, kind of came out of that one with a statement. Obviously, they have to take care of business against Chicago on Wednesday at first. But I wouldn't be shocked if I wouldn't be shocked if the Revs came out of this week with 6 points. And if they do that, then it's absolutely on. But like, their margin for error at this point is very very slim, but very, very slim is at least larger than what we were talking about with the Sounders 5 minutes ago,
Yeah, but even at that, I think my more general point was that, like, this isn't just going to be like hooray, we made the playoff team. Like, I think if they get over the line, it's, look, it's MLS, it's 1 game sample size, is all the cliches you want to say about any given day, but like, that's a legitimate team that I would put in like the same tier from like 2 to 7, or give or take.
Yeah, I would put them, no matter what happens, I would put them below Philly and Montreal. Montreal is better than I think people recognize.
Well, 1 game sample size. They have so many defensive issues and a huge question mark at goalkeeper. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with you that they have that many defensive issues anymore. Like, I think they've been playing really, really well defensively. Like, goalkeeper is a question. But like, even with that, I still think Montreal's a cut above. Whereas whoever in from 3 to 7, all due respect to the Red Bulls, all due respect to NYCFC, both of whom have pretty much punched their tickets. I don't see, like, it's whoever's hot on the day. And on top of that, like, it's never a good idea to bet against Bruce Arena in the playoffs. So
I appreciate all the respect that you gave to NYCFC and Red Bulls. I hope that they took that with full respect as you doled out. Moving on to
Ding dong.
staying in the Eastern Conference playoff race. Another team that's chasing with the Revs, Toronto FC. They're up 5 spots to number 16 with a 2-0 road win over Charlotte FC. Give the ball to the Italians. All those jokes are going to come. Insigne, Bernardeschi both scored, and they just have a couple match winners in attack that few teams in the league can match.
Yeah. I not to be reductionist, but like, sometimes that is the extent of what happened, and that was certainly the case. I mean, it was Insigne and Bernardeschi against Świderski and Józwiak in terms of the DP matchup this weekend, and like, that heavily favored one team over the other. But that also points to the issue with Toronto. Like, the first 4 or 5 games after they got these guys and they got Mark Anthony Kaye and they were all healthy, they were playing, really good, really flowing, like Bob Bradley style soccer. But with Kaye and Jonathan Osorio both being hurt, and then neither of the center forwards, Jimenez, who was so good earlier in the year, and Ayo Akinola, has just never gotten his feet under him. It has become almost like a 2-man show. And a lot of the stuff that we saw from those first few games, like Michael Bradley getting forward, getting into the box, because he knew that with 2 veterans with him in midfield, he was able to make these sort of runs from deeper, 3rd or even 4th man runs. Like, the free-flowing Bob Bradley stuff is not really happening right now for Toronto FC. And of course, when you have $25 million of attackers out there. Sometimes that doesn't matter. But down the stretch here, I do think that they need more than these two guys. Like they got a 3-game week coming up, right? Like they have less wiggle room than the Revs do. They're a point behind, and they've played one extra game, so it's like their backs are 100% against the wall.
Yeah, I'm going to steal your point on ETR from I believe last Thursday. I think that you put it at they need to go 5-1-1 over these games, so they got one win. They need to go at least 4 wins over the last 6 games, as you said. So they're 3 points below the line. The line right now is Columbus in 7th with 36 points. Columbus have 2 games in hand on Toronto, so more realistically, they're chasing Miami, who have the same point total, but Miami also have a game in hand. So like you said, there is no room for error. And to give them credit, though, I was saying kind of towards the end of the summer, and even as Insignia's debut got delayed a little bit with that calf injury, that the margin for error was so thin, and this team was so thin because, again, they were doing a rebuild on the fly, building the play in as they were fine. So it's better to have the strong top end that they did, even if the depth wasn't there yet, because that's going to come over time. They couldn't have been any faster with that. I was saying the whole time was if Mark Anthony Kay in particular, if he misses any games in addition to the Italian forwards and Domenico Crescito, the left back, if Kay misses 2 games, I think that they're screwed. And full credit to Jaden Nelson, who's filled in at center mid, a position that I don't believe he had ever played before. He hadn't played in his pro career, at least. Young guy, I'll give them credit, I think, for even just still being here within a shout to give their match winners a chance to win them games and get above the playoff line. And before you go, Insigne in 580 minutes, 4 goals, 2 assists. That's a goal contribution better than within every 100 minutes. And Bernardeschi, 5 goals, 3 assists in the same time frame, which is, I don't know what, quick math, a goal contribution every 75 minutes or whatever. It's crazy stuff. Yeah,
Bernardeschi in particular has been his fit has been seamless because you can see when he's Insigne, he has that Napoli thing where he's got to be a bit of an individualist. He has zero conscience when he's shooting, and obviously he's gonna be he already is a very good player at MLS. Bernardeschi, you could see he wants to combine every time. He's not thinking about making it the Federico show. He's trying to be part of a big thing, and it's working really well. And but at the same time, he can still just walk into a goal like he did this weekend. That was absolutely ridiculous. He strolled into it, where he's just okay, I'm gonna get this on my left foot. I'm curling to the back post. He's been a lot of fun to watch, dude. A lot of fun.
So again, and another thing with just because he hadn't been playing very much Juventus, going back, I forget which club that Juventus acquired him from. He was a legitimate star at that point. So his star dimmed a little bit. That's what happens when you're on the bench at a big club or whatever. And he's been incredible since he got here. I do it was a good microcosm at the end of the game. I don't know if because there was a bunch of other games on. I don't know if you kind of tuned out at that point, but I kind of had it on in the background. And every time I looked up, it was Bernardeschi and Insigne playing, just the two of them, trying to waste time. And I thought that was a perfect microcosm for their season, for everything. It's all right, you guys go in the corner, you do this, and they pretty successfully killed off the rest of the game. So I don't know. I thought that was a nice little microcosm there. Moving on, again, sticking in the East, and we'll do that for a little bit longer here. The East is going to be a lot of fun, this playoff race over the next few weeks. FC Cincinnati up to 14th after a 2-2 draw with the Columbus Crew. That, we say games have everything. My God, this game had everything on and off the field. It felt about the perfect rivalry game. Maybe the quality wasn't the best. It's not going to be a replayed special for all these insane passing combinations, but you had late goals, crazy atmosphere. Yeah, one coach shushing the home fans, another coach cursing to kick off a press conference. The Cucho beer catch chug, all that and more. I mean, I don't know where to start. And none of that talks about the playoffs or tactics or anything that other than just pointing at the highlights and smiling, because this was just so much fun.
It was. And Hell is Real has ended up being really quickly becoming one of the handful of very best rivalry matches in MLS.
Even when both of these teams were so bad. This was a must-watch game when they were at 13th and 14th in the East.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And the fans bring it, and the Cincy fans brought it a little too much after the whistle because they were throwing stuff on the field, which you should not do. But the first goal of the game in this one was scored off a nutmeg through ball. Like, yeah, when you have moments like that, you have coaches like stunting on the field, shushing the fans, WWE style. It's absurd, and it's all like in hell is real is obviously the sort of like the flag, plant your flag here on like the very best of it, but like since he's been doing this against almost everybody this year, like their games have been incredibly watchable all year long. But like this is the fourth time in the past 8 games they've conceded a goal in the final 10 minutes to lose a result, whether it was a draw turning into a loss or in this one a win turning into a draw. And that's why they're below the playoff line. Like this has been a recurring issue for them. It's another sort of, well, I don't want to say build the plane as they're flying it. It's more like fix the plane as they're flying it, because this is the worst team in the world for 3 straight years. Yeah. And there's been some roster turnover, but it's not like Chris Albright has torn everything down all at once and rebuilt it anew. It's like he's been trying to add and subtract pieces throughout the year. And that's hard. And I think you see it at the end of games where maybe the chemistry isn't quite there and the confidence isn't quite there to see it out and to finish things off.
Yeah, and we're going to get to Columbus next, so we'll be focusing on Cincy for the remainder of this little time here. Yeah, I think what I've been most impressed at is that, like you said, it wasn't like a wholesale Miami change where I think that they got rid of 19 players or something like that. Like Cincy wasn't like that. It was more. Yeah. It was a more concentrated. I thought that they were going to struggle really, really badly again, like to start the season. Again, like I didn't blame them for not being able to get out, or maybe not aggressive enough to get out of enough of the bad contracts. And like look, let me tell you, the reason why they kept trading down from 1 to 2 on the allocation order, they had to maximize every single asset they possibly could. The cupboard was so bare from the previous regime. They pulled up money. They again had a lot of money tied into bad contracts. So it wasn't even an indictment on Cincy that I was like, yeah, this is going to take time. And they are way ahead of schedule. The fact that they're in a playoff race, the fact that I believe that they're going to get above the playoff line, like that's a huge win in and of itself. Like looking at this core moving forward, like Matt Miazga, he didn't play a game since February and he looks really good again. Like he's been everything they needed. Like they need a couple more players, but like this team is pretty close to being like legitimate. This isn't just like flash in the pan stuff. This isn't, Brandon Vasquez, like he's having his career year. This is who he is. Lucho Acosta, This is his best year. But this is who he is. Like Brenner, this is who he is. Like what everybody, I guess, thought he was going to be. Obi Wobodo, like this, what they've done over the last particularly few months since being able to add Moreno, Wobodo, Miazga during the season. And those are 3 dudes that are legit starters for them. In like one case, like Wobodo is one of the best defensive midfielders in the league. Miazga, I think, has the potential to be one of the top center backs in the league. Like that's phenomenal.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. Like going from what they were even 8 months ago to what they are now, it's just been a fantastic job by that front office. I think it's a fantastic job by Pat Noonan and the coaching staff as well. Yeah. Even though they haven't been turning this dominance into wins. And here's the thing, right? Like I'm looking at their remaining schedule. They got 7 games left. I think if they win 4 of them, they're in. And it's like they're home versus Charlotte next weekend. There's this coming weekend. That should be a win. They're away to NYCFC. That they shouldn't win that one. But then they're home against San Jose. That should be a win. They're away to RSL and Seattle. We should chalk them up as losses. But then they have home against Chicago and at DC to end the season.
That's lovely.
I think they're in good shape. But here's the other thing, Tom. Like they have how many wins in their past 15 games? Even though they've played such good soccer, they've only won twice in their past 15. They've only won twice since mid-May. It's kind of crazy the way this season has gone for them. Like you said, it's a victory that we're even talking about them at this point in the season, and like not in a super draft context, which has been the tradition over the past few years. I do think they're going to get it done, but like they have to figure out how to tighten it up the final 10 minutes of games, because if they have more of what we saw this past weekend, they're not going to get across the finish line this year.
2 quick points. One, I'll go with the serious one first. On the back of that, FC Cincinnati are second worst in the league in terms of points dropped from winning positions. 23 points. Only the New England Revolution with 26 points dropped from winning position or worse. And a second standalone point, their second goal was scored like a recycle from a long throw. I contend that every single team has to have a long throw specialist or something close to it. And maybe this is my D3 soccer nostalgia, because every single team we've ever played had a long throw. But I'm telling you, man, I believe in it. I've been joking that I think Walker Zimmerman should be getting double-digit goals off of long throws and corners and everything.
Did you do the flip throw when you were in men's league? Do you break out the flip throw, Tom?
You think I'm not flexible for that? And then or strong enough for just a giant throw? No. You said D3 college soccer is a bunch of big dudes that kind of bang around. So that's where that came from. Anyway, enough of that. Moving up, the other side of this crazy 2-2 draw, the Columbus Crew. They are number 12. And as we alluded to, they are currently above the playoff line in a good spot with 2 games in hand. This was, again, going back to the top of this game, being crazy. The one coach that we alluded to that was shushing the Cincinnati crowd, Caleb Porter, not sure what was going on exactly there behind the scenes, or maybe what was being said from the crowd. But Columbus escaped with a 96-minute equalizer from a fullback with a volley that kind of snuck in. Doyle, what do you make of this side of the Hell's Real Derby?
Yeah, they're really similar to Cincinnati in a lot of ways, in that they've become really hard to beat. Like Cincy, I think they've got one loss in their past dozen games or so. Maybe even
8
longer.
draws in their last 14, to be fair, too, but still.
Right, and that's what I was going to say is like Cincy, they can't figure out how to finish off games, and with Columbus, it's twofold, right? Like they give up a lot of late goals off of set pieces, especially. They're just for whatever reason, for a team with as much experience and at the back and decent size as they've got, you would expect better from them in those situations. But also, while Cincy is kind of like all gas, no brakes, Columbus have trouble finding the accelerator. Like the first Tom, like for the first 70 minutes of this game, can you think of a single moment from the Crew that you really enjoyed watching?
That's so good. I've never heard somebody turn around to all gas, no brakes. All brakes, no gas. A lot of turn signals. A lot of no. You go ahead.
Yeah.
We can wait here at the intersection. No, it's fair, and it's like maybe it's relying a little bit too much on the individualism of Zelarayan and Cucho, because like they really can bail you out with some moments of brilliance. And if you take the game to not true counterattacking, but if we limit the opposition, and even if that's limiting ourselves, well, we have Lucas Zelarayan and Cucho Hernandez, and they don't. So, like, I'll take those guys with limited chances against the other team's best guys with limited chances, and like that's a way that teams across the world play and win, and like they do have that top end talent. But yeah, it's not exactly always fun.
No, it's not, and I think Crew fans are right to want to ask a little bit more at this point from this team, especially because with Cucho in there, they're so effective at stretching the field. They he is always a threat to run in behind, whether he's hitting like the A gap between the two center backs, or whether he's splitting center back and a weak side fullback or strong side. Either way, like he's going to get in behind, and that sort of movement always creates space. But in Columbus, they have a really tough time taking advantage of it. I do think that the primary culprit is that they're often so slow to move the ball out of central midfield. Mm-hmm. They're so cautious with it. It's like I understand wanting to avoid turnovers, but sooner or later you got to take risks, and they tend not to take the type of risks that can and often do lead to goals until the game is until they're chasing the game, and that is so. That's how you end up with. You said 8 draws in their last 13 or 14 games, was it? Yeah. So I think like that's what I'm seeing with the Crew now, and I think that so you're seeing a team that can be very dangerous because of the talent that they have and the experience that they have, but they also, like, to me, they're just leaving something on the table every single week.
What if Kevin Molino harkens back to 2020?
Yeah, that's a really good what if, dude. Because I think I referenced that 2020 Minnesota United team earlier in the show. Part of what made that team great was that Molino's ability to come in off the left wing and either threaten goal or become like a second 10. Like that, he and Reynoso together were just ripping teams apart down the stretch in 2020. If he's healthy, they don't need him for 90 minutes every week, 30, 35. You put him on that left wing with Zelarayan and Cucho, it
Pedro
wouldn't
Santos
almost
overlapping.
wouldn't matter what other stuff. Almost wouldn't matter what other stuff is happening. Deeper on the field, like they're going to generate goals, and if they start doing that, then this is like the Revs. This is a team that becomes really, really scary in the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, thematically, it seems like I'm saying some similar things because of all these teams jumbled in the playoff race. But I kind of hold them in the same regard with New England. Of again, maybe I'm thinking too much about that 2020 MLS Cup foundation, but like I'd put New England and Columbus like with like Montreal, NYCFC, Red Bulls. Like again, the East is so wide open that there's room for it as long as they can keep, I guess, a little bit more of that solidity while opening the game up for their star players. Like that's a formula that we've seen work in this league.
Yep, absolutely.
Moving on, we're getting into the top 10, and for our East Coast bias is finally ending briefly here. So we're going to go with the LA Galaxy, number 10, up 4 spots after 2-1 win over the New England Revolution. I think I just want to lay out, and can we just play the Ricky Pooch assist on loop for the next 4.5 minutes, and I'm just going to sit here? Like, that's out of control.
Yeah, it was one of the best passes that we've seen all year. It was like the type of pass that you kind of dream of seeing when one of your when one of the teams signs a 23-year-old Spanish youth international number 10 from Barcelona. Checked a lot of boxes and showed why those boxes are checked in that play. At the same time, Matt Polster has to absolutely truck it. Cannot give him.
I was gonna bring that up. I don't remember. I was read this point that you made in your column. I don't remember that you've advocated for maybe you need a professional foul here or there. This is the most time where I was like, just give up on trying to defend him in this situation and just like pull him down. Like I remember like laughing. I was like, I'm not sure if I've ever like seen Doyle do it. Not even there's no finesse to that idea. It was just like he needs to be on the floor.
Yeah, like
you can't let that happen.
Honestly, it's not even pull him down. It's like
right.
the ball Ricky Pooch has room to chest it down and play that through ball because Matt Polster's like, who I love, who's one of the best D-mids in the league, but for whatever reason he switched off for a half second and he's just watching the ball come down to Ricky Pooch. And it's like, no, you close on him, and even if it's a 40-60 instead of a 50-50, you make him feel it. And I, given what happened, I don't think that mistake will happen again from the Revs D-mid, but from the Galaxy. Look, it wasn't perfect. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing, first half highlights where as soon as it was 2-0, the Revs grabbed control and started overloading the flanks and getting, both fullbacks into the primary assist zones and hitting the woodwork multiple times. Jonathan Bond had a really good game. So it wasn't perfect from the Galaxy, but it was, for half an hour or so in this game, 25 minutes, I guess, in this game, it was so good. It looked almost exactly like what I think Greg Vanney had, been dreaming about for the past month or so after the Pooch deal went final.
Yeah, that's all good and well. But they why won't they play Dejan Joveljic with Chicharito? I don't understand. I guess like what Kevin Cabral does off the ball is very strong, but it's I don't want to take a pot shot at him for his lack of end product this season, but it is what it is. Is he that much better off the ball than Dejan Joveljic is? Because I tend to think that Joveljic is very good off the ball as well. And I don't understand why you switch to a 2-striker formation here and leave your $4 million striker on the bench who's averaging like a goal every 90 minutes or whatever because he has so many limited minutes.
And honestly, maybe in this one, maybe it just came down to squad rotation because like this is, they have a 3-game week, right? Like they're away at New England, then they're away Wednesday at Toronto, and then they're home on Sunday against Sporting Kansas City. It's like that's a lot of travel for a week. I assume that this all had to do with squad rotation, but like that first half, it was a 3-5-2. It was the most extended run of a 3-5-2 that we've seen from the Galaxy this year. Like I said, it was not perfect, but it was really, really good. And I have to imagine, I agree with you. It in a must-win game, if it's Chicharito and Joveljic with Ricky Pooch underneath, like that's pretty attractive. Like that should produce some goals.
Yeah, but it's all in theory. We've been talking about this since like May. So, and like there is no indication that that is ever going to happen. Not even for an extended period of time, but even just a full game. Like you said, maybe this was just squad rotation too. And maybe it's like, again, you not to reiterate for people who listen to Extra Time, you were saying the same thing. He wants to play a 4-2-3-1, and I get it. Yep. But at some point, you need to be a bit more dogmatic with these are your two best attackers. Ricky Pooch opens the field more for that final pass, and just it's looking really good. Why not have another dynamic off-ball runner who can finish goals?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know at this point. Kevin Cabral, 1 goal, 3 assists this year. Whew.
It is what it is. You guys are too mean to him, and we're going to move on. Number 7, Nashville SC, up from number 9, Doyle. Back-to-back wins for the first time in a long time. They have a +7 goal difference over the last 2 games, with a 3-0 win over Vancouver this weekend to follow up on a 4-0 win over FC Dallas. Hani Mukhtar is a bad man. This is one of the best players in the league. Doyle, are they back? Are you convinced?
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced. I'm pretty convinced. Like, this is what we thought this team would look like for a good chunk of the year. And like, I talk so much about tactics and personnel and overall strategy and all that. And I know you do too. And it's fun to talk about that. But like, so many games in this league are won and lost on intensity. So many games in any league are won and lost on intensity. And Nashville had not. I don't know whether it was just a bit of a malaise because they kept the same core together for so long, or a malaise because they had that season opening trip, which drained them. And we've certainly seen that from teams before.
Yep.
So they never got a rhythm, but they were going through the motions, it looked like, for a huge chunk of the year. And then, a couple of weeks ago, they had that meltdown. Dax McCarty lost his mind in the post game and called everybody out, everybody except for Hani Mukhtar, including himself. He called himself out as well. And since then, they've played like their hair's on fire. And granted, they got a little bit of help.
Is that a ginger joke?
It was not, but we can make it that if you want to. They got a little help from Vancouver this week, and obviously from Dallas last week. But like, they just they look like a different team in terms of the amount of energy that they're putting into the game, and the will to win 50-50s, the will to win the ball in the box, all the stuff that Dax McCarty was talking about. Like, it looks like everybody on the team listened.
Are you ready to say that they're safe? They're 3 points above the playoff line. They have the same amount of games played as Portland. Seattle have 1 game in hand. So theoretically, if Seattle were to win that game in hand, they'd also be 3 points behind them. Obviously, Real Salt Lake and the Galaxy are between them and the playoff line as well. But after these 2 games, are you kind of exhale? All right, they're good.
Yeah, I'm real close to it. I'm not going to say it's completely good with them, just because the reality is that math is math, and they can still absolutely screw everything up, especially because a bunch of the teams chasing them have a game in hand. Some Galaxy still have 2 games in hand. So it could get ugly quick. We've so I'm not there yet, but I will say that of all the teams 5 through 11 in both conferences, I'm most confident that Nashville, of all that in that entire group, I'm most confident that Nashville's going to make the playoffs. I'm like 90% there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I've been generally higher on them for the past few years anyway. So maybe that comes from my own thinking on this and not, feeling like, all right, this confirms my what I was thinking, rather than like the 6-game winless run. So yeah, again, Hani Mukhtar, man, he's a superstar in this league. I'm not sure if we say it enough. He's going to be either first or second on the MVP ballot, or essentially, in worst case scenario, third, depending on what Daniel Kozlak does. Back-to-back years. Not a lot of players do that. This type of consistency, this type of high end. And if we're going to an old school sports radio debate about, well, MVP is most valuable to his team, where would this team be without him?
Yeah, they'd be nowhere. They'd be nowhere. I mean, it is the sports radio debate of like, what does valuable mean? And I think an answer that you could have to that is like Hani Mukhtar. Everything that he's doing, like when your teammates are coming out after games, like somebody else has to be able to do something on this team, or we're going to lose. The only reason we're here is because he's been so incredible. Like, that is the definition of valuable. He has, I thought he had a really strong argument for most valuable player last year. I think it's even stronger this year. That said, Dax is right. And Jack Mayer is not going to score a brace every game. There do have to be some answers from the center forwards. There do have to be some answers just in terms of putting the ball in the net from the wide players. I do expect that to be better now that Anibal Godoy is back. That's gone under the radar a little bit, but with him back, like, I had him in my best 11 last year. I thought he was the best number 8 in the league last year, and he's really the only one of that central midfield group, and they have 4 guys who, play there: Dax and Sean Davis and Anunga and Godoy. Godoy is the only one who really spreads the field, opens the field up with those long diagonals. And given how important crossing is to this team, like that ability to pinpoint those diagonals is a force magnifier for both the fullbacks and the center forwards. I would not be super surprised if just out of nowhere, CJ Sapong suddenly became hot down the stretch here because he started getting, better service against defenders who are backpedaling instead of having to go against defenders who are sort of in a block, which is something that, CJ's never been the best at.
Okay, so you gave a real reason, rational thought out. I'll just go with another sports radio. He's due. I would not be surprised.
Yeah,
he's due. Moving on, number 6, New York Red Bulls. They're up a spot from 7th last week with a 3-1 win over Inter Miami. That was aided with a red card, untimely red card for Inter Miami and Alejandro Pozuelo. The Red Bulls have been the best away team in MLS this year, but they won a home game, and they won it pretty convincingly.
Yeah, they did.
They aided the red card, of course.
I was going to push back a little bit because for 25 minutes, Inter Miami was pretty clearly the better team here, right?
Yes, but my counterpoint there is there a team that is less suited to playing up a man than the New York Red Bulls? And I think that
there has not been. They have been terrible playing against 10 men for like the past 8 years. I agree with that.
Yeah, and they look really solid and really strong after going up a man. So maybe credit's due. Again, maybe this is all relative to expectations or whatever. They should be dominating a game when you're up a man, but hey, they went out and did it.
Can you make a case for them being the second best team in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I wouldn't make it, but you can make it.
Well, I want you to make it.
It would be that they have a defined style. They have, they steadied the ship after a really difficult summer. There's going to be less midweek games, obviously, going down the stretch here. You have a potential top-end talent in Luquinhas. He hasn't been as great or as good as he was at the beginning of the year. But you have Lewis Morgan. You have an amorphous attack that I think a few players can help with. Kyle Duncan, I think, is a really strong addition by them, and the way that it'll kind of multiply the guys around him. Daniel Edelman breaking out a little bit here in the midfield. And then you have Carlos Cornell, who last year was one of the best goalkeepers in the league. You have Aaron Long, who's one of the best center backs in the league. So I think that would be the argument. But again, I still think 2 through 9 are all the same or similar, not the same.
Interesting. Yeah, I tend to agree with you that. Well, I'll say it's 3 through 9 because I think Montreal's a tier above the rest in the Eastern Conference, behind Philly, obviously. Mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff that you listed as positives, the amorphous attack, the ability to sort of switch and plug and play different players in different spots and be able to get the same, relatively the same output. Isn't that the exact reason why the Red Bulls have consistently come up short in the playoffs? Because they don't have a guy who's not like that. They have a guy who's just so much better that he can go out and win you a game the way that Maxi Morales and Tati Castellanos did last year, or Lucas Zelarayan did the year before that. Isn't that the argument against the Red Bulls being a top 2 team?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is just me doing a mock trial there, and I wouldn't be pointing to that. But if you're pointing out why they're good, it's the idea that they have numerous guys who can theoretically beat you. And then again, in the playoffs, that's it. Usually, really, the force magnifier is your best player winning games. And what Bruce Arena said It's not a deep argument, but it's the right one. Like, your best players have to be your best players. And if you're the Red Bulls, even Orlando have been maddeningly inconsistent. They have the best player on the field in that game. If it's Facundo Torres, probably, right? Or, give or take whatever you want to argue about. Like, I don't know. I think that Miami, Columbus, Cincy, New England, Toronto, like, their top end talent just can't match that. So you have to play the we have a lot of good players card.
So agreed. So then, who is the Red Bulls' best player?
Lewis Morgan lately? I mean, we're like Aaron Long. I think there's too many different answers to this. Like, it should be Luquinhas. It should be. But it hasn't really been since, again, his first 10 games or whatever was really, really good. If he hits that level again, it's him. And I think that it needs to be him for this team to have a legitimate chance.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Luquinhas, he's the number 10. They brought him in for that role at a really high price for them. He's looked the part, or he did look the part for a month. He hasn't looked the part recently. Obviously, Patrick Klimala is a nice talent, but he hasn't been a particularly productive player.
It's very kind the way you handled that one. I could tell you were searching for the right words.
He's talented. I think Patrick Klimala is legitimately talented. I do wonder if maybe he's not the right guy for that Red Bull attack.
Let me just leave you with the Luquinhas nugget. The Philadelphia Union were very, very interested in him and thought that they were going to be able to get a deal for him done. This was before they signed Daniel Gazdag and obviously before Luquinhas came to the Red Bulls.
Yeah, well, maybe like Daniel Gazdag, he'll year 2 he'll find his form and put in an MVP season. Red Bulls, obviously, they could use that down the stretch here, but they were in a bit of a nosedive 3 weeks ago, and they've pulled out of it very nicely. This will be their 13th straight year in the playoffs, which is an absolutely remarkable accomplishment to do that, tying Seattle's record that Seattle set last year, and it's technically still alive. Yeah, but we'll see how that turns out. But the Red Bulls are in for sure.
Yeah, remarkable consistency. I know that in probably that's so Metro stuff, like taking a step back, the fact that this team has made the playoffs that many years in a row, it's really a joy to behold in a league like this, and it's really impressive for the consistency, even if they haven't quite gotten over that final hump. Moving forward, 2 teams left here. Austin FC up to number 3. I don't know if you've heard, they won 4-1 over LAFC, and I'm going to just duck and cover under my desk because LAFC are number 2 in the power rankings and also number 3. And I imagine that that's going to come with a lot of people, and I'm going to blame J. Sam Jones in his mentions. So what do you think?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you really believe that Austin's a better team than LAFC?
I voted LAFC second and Philly first, and Austin third. So this was me just deflecting pretty heavily, and just because J. Sam Jones starts every one of those with, if you have any complaints, reply to my inbox at Tom Bogert. My DMs are open.
Give us your rationale for having Austin third.
On the plus side, this was their best game. It was a signature win. It was, I think you wrote about it a little bit too. It wasn't just like, I think that we all know that this team can play some beautiful soccer. We know that this team has the top end, Sebastian Driussi, the MVP candidate, front runner, depending on where you view Hani Mukhtar in that. They have the second banana and Diego Fagundes, Alex Ring in the midfield, all of these things. They can play beautiful soccer and tactical soccer. They have, like, I don't want to say that they haven't shown the other side, but like this game was also super physical. And this game was also like, we're going to step on your throat and it's over, because we came out at halftime. ESPN was going into the break saying Steve Cherundolo is going to have a lot to talk about at halftime, but it's still only 1-0, whatever it is. LAFC are going to have to come out firing. It was Josh Wolf that like had Austin FC coming out firing. And they scored, what was it, a couple goals? It was over, 10 minutes after halftime. Like, that's a different kind of ruthlessness. I'm not sure that I saw from this team against a great team like LAFC is. And, like, a little bit of the scuffles. And I again, my own personal preferences, I love an intense physical game. Like, they had that. It was Diego Fagundes is, 5'3" or whatever. He's my height, not that short. But he's in the navel cavity of Jesus Murillo. Like, yo, you want some? I'm not backing down. Like, these are things that I think matter. I think these are things that are important that we overlook too much. And so those are all the good things. But the counterpoint is like, let's not react to just one result. And I know that they've beaten LAFC twice, but LAFC are still ahead of them in the Supporters Shield. We were talking about LAFC last week as, are they going to break the record? Not if they're going to win the Supporters Shield. So I'm a little bit slower to react on power ranking voting. So
Yeah, I think that's entirely reasonable and well stated. I didn't vote in power rankings this week. I just didn't get around to it.
Doesn't believe in democracy. Classic.
Yeah, I do not believe in democracy. Exactly. As Kent Brockman once said, democracy just doesn't work. I did not vote in power rankings. I would probably have had them third as well. This was a fantastic performance. I think it was reminiscent of Cincinnati's win over Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago. But just like in that game, I do not have Cincinnati above Philadelphia in the power rankings. I think that they did a really good job of just blitzing LAFC and outworking them and playing with way more intensity. Coming out and winning that battle. I think there were 2 really hard fouls from Austin in the first 10 minutes, and LAFC did not respond in kind, which, when you see that, you kind of suspect what's going to happen next, and that suspicion played out. But they also did a really good job of being compact defensively through the midfield. I think LAFC contributed to this because there's no balance with Vela and Bale out there at the same time. So like you're not worried about runs in behind. And then on top of it, no Ilie to move the game around. And I thought Jose Cifuentes had just a nightmare of a game, like his worst game of the year. Yeah. So like all these things added up. But at the same time, you have to Austin deserves a ton of credit for all of that, right? They
didn't happen by accident.
We've said this throughout the year, they look a little bit easy to play against at times. Like you can, even when they're scoring 3 goals on you, you find the ball against them. You could play through their midfield. You could find space in that, you get in the half spaces, get into the primary systems. You could do all that stuff against them, even when they're playing well. LAFC basically did not do that until the game was already 4-0. And I had not seen this from Austin before. They were SOBs to play against in this game. So I'm a lot higher on them after this than I was at any point in the season. But at the same time, I still I still think that the top tier in this league is LAFC and Philly in some order. And I think that even irrespective of this win, Austin's a tier below that.
Yeah. And again, like you said, I was also high on them before this, but I think this was another level. This was just a really, really great win that they can point to, and even within the locker room, within the club, it's like, hey, look, remember when we did this? Like, this is what we need. What would it be? 4 playoff games, 5 playoff games, whatever it is. Yeah, this is what we need 5 times in the playoffs, and we can win the cup. So, and again, just because we have them 3 and LAFC 2, this does not mean anything. It doesn't matter. That doesn't look.
And also it's J. Sam Jones's fault.
That's true. Yeah, it's not we. This isn't a collective. This is a dictatorship. It's J. Sam Jones. All right, moving on. Last one. We alluded to him. We've talked about him a few times. Philadelphia Union, number 1. They have finally dethroned LAFC to changing of the guard at number 1 in the power rankings. They put another wallop in this week. And I'm just going to get out of the way right here. Hey, do you remember when you said that Gazdag wasn't going to be enough of a difference maker?
Do you remember when Jim Curtin did? Okay, so I wasn't the only one thinking that.
I think you guys read into that. I don't know. I mean, even talking to people at the club around that time when they were a little frustrated. I'm like, it wasn't like they were like, all right, we need to go into the transfer market and get a new player. This isn't going to work. Like they signed 2 new DPs in attack, and it doesn't just happen overnight. So I don't know. You don't expect them to score 6 goals 4 times in 10 games as the stats been making the rounds. I'm not going to regurgitate it yet again here, but I wasn't worried about this team at all. Even though it's unrealistic to expect some of these heights, but yeah, I think it's just another awesome story.
Yeah, back in the start of the year, if you'd asked me for a points total for Philly, I would have said 60 to 65 points, 65 points on the upper threshold
elite
of what this, which is elite. Like before 2017, that's a Supporter Shield winning team. Since 2017, the numbers for Supporter Shield winning teams have gone up and up and up. And of course, the 2020 version of the Union were part of that. That it was a COVID year, so
Yeah.
they only played 23 games. But I think prorate them out to 34 games, they would have been about 70 points.
And they would have played the Revolution 24 times if you prorated it.
Right. And if you look at what this team is doing now, they're pushing through that 60-65 point total and towards 70 points, which, and we went over this on extra time. They are very much in the supporter shield race. Jim Curtin 2 months ago said this: what we're missing right now is that one player to make a play. Maybe it's beat a guy or change how the defense is playing us. We're a little bit safe and stagnant to play against. That was in June. They scored 22 goals through 18 games. They've scored 35 goals in the subsequent 10 games, something like that. And it's not just one guy who has been beating players, though. Adding Jack McGlynn to the central midfield mix and allowing them to, like, they use the ball more. Like they have more entries into the final third, more passes per possession. Their possessions are wider, so they're doing more with the fullbacks. But also, it's just like Michael Ura is healthy, and he and Gazdag and Carranza have this fantastic attacking chemistry.
Awesome.
And that's 3 DP quality players, man. So if you have your 3 DP players playing like that, and what is turning out to be a record-breaking defense, potentially, you're in the mix to win freaking everything. And they're doing, the part of it that I like best is that while they're still doing Philadelphia Union soccer, which is very direct and very linear, the fact that they're doing other stuff now too, in terms of knocking the ball around and using possession to open teams up and combination play around the box, which was missing the first half of this year. That's elevated them to a level that in attack, we've literally never seen a team eviscerate opponents like this.
Yeah, and the knock on the Union over the last few years, even the year that they won the Supporters Shield, is you worried about the air quote top end talent. And again, if they play Nashville, again, different conference is probably a bad example, but they still might not have the best attacker on the field per se, because I guess none of these 3 guys are really, really challenging for the Supporters Shield, for MVP. But like those are 3 like legitimate like best XI contenders, and like it doesn't need to be exactly Cucho Hernandez, but like you have 3 dudes who are maybe a tier below that. And it's, again, this is an incredibly different team. I thought at the beginning of the season, I liked them better for Shield than Cup, and maybe it's just easier to predict Shield than it is for Cup. But even I think in their best case scenario with Julian Carranza, I was talking to people about it after the trade, was this might be our best move, like pound for pound, like value. And like if you thought Kai Wagner for whatever 200,000 was great, if you thought some of these homegrowns, if you thought Jose Martinez, they were like, if he's as good as we think he is, this might be our best move ever. And I was talking to people this week about it, and they were like, he's even better than we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, he's really good. Like he's really, really good. And the thing that makes them terrifying, even though they probably won't have the best player on the field in most of their matchups, I would say. They might have the next 8. And Carranza is definitely one of them. And even more important than that is that point I made about how Carranza, Gazdag, and Ura together they each make the other better. Like their strengths, like they overlap a little bit, but like it's more that they resonate in a way that makes each of them improves the other. Here's the point I want to make. I was tweeting just a little bit about the Union this afternoon. And Winston got back to me saying, everyone's also forgetting that the Union haven't yet convincingly beat an MLS Cup contender. They beat Montreal and NYCFC early in the season, but that was when both those teams were in CCL play. They couldn't beat the Red Bulls. They couldn't beat Montreal and Minnesota at home. They lost to Dallas away and drew at LAFC. How much credence do you put into that?
Not a ton. I think that we've seen this team win big games over the last few years. Again, the defensive foundation is the same or very, very similar as the past couple of years. So I don't worry about that. And again, what if they played LAFC this month? What if they played NYCFC Montreal this month, as opposed to earlier in the season when they were struggling in attack? Like it's clicked. It's, don't want to call it like a different team in that attack, but like I have no worries.
All right. I'm good to end it there. No worries about the Philadelphia Union.
All right. I think that's good. Doyle, do you have any more, with all due respect, to say to any teams? I don't know if you covered all due respect to everybody.
Yeah, how many all due respects did I throw out? I think I just threw out one to the NYCFC and the Red Bulls, right?
To the greater New York City metro area.
There you go.
All right, let's recap of the top 10. Number 10, LA Galaxy. Number 9, FC Dallas. Number 8, NYCFC. Number 7, Nashville. 6, New York Red Bulls. 5, Minnesota United. 4, CF Montreal. 3, Austin FC. 2, LAFC. And number 1, the Philadelphia Union. Again, power rankings were presented by So Rare. Doyle, thank you and goodbye.